The sky had turned the color of bruises by the time I got off my shift. Thick clouds churned over the Alabama horizon like they were angry at the world. I stepped off the bus, my diner uniform clinging to my skin from the sticky heat that had now given way to a sudden, brutal downpour. I was exhausted. My feet ached from 12 straight hours on them, my back screamed, and all I wanted was to get home, peel off my soaked socks, and hold my baby boy. Kalen was only 9 months old, but he was my reason for every breath I took. My chest tightened with longing just thinking about his sleepy little smile. I turned the corner onto my street, water sloshing around my sneakers, and that's when I saw him. My baby. Kalen sat hunched on the porch steps, alone, in the pouring rain. For one terrible, suspended moment, I couldn't move. The world narrowed. Just the sound of the rain hammering against the pavement and the sight of my son. Soaked to the bone, shivering, wailing through lips that had turned bluish from the cold. Then instinct took over. My purse slipped from my shoulder, forgotten. I ran. Kalen. My voice cracked as I reached him, scooping his tiny body into my arms. He was freezing, his soaked clothes clinging to his fragile skin, and the yellow knit blanket I had spent weeks handmaking during pregnancy now hung limp around him like a wet rag. His tiny hands clutched at my uniform like he thought I might vanish too. "I've got you," I whispered, heart pounding. "Mama's here, baby. I've got you." That's when the door behind us creaked open. "Well, look who finally decided to come home," came the voice, sharp, cold, unmistakable. I turned around slowly, shielding Kalen with my body. My mother, Marvette, stood in the doorway with her arms crossed like this was some ordinary Tuesday. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I yelled over the roar of the rain. "He's a baby. He could have gotten sick or worse." She didn't flinch. "I told you, Kane. I don't raise bastards. You brought shame into my house, you deal with the consequences." Each word sliced through me sharper than the wind. But she wasn't done. From behind her, my older sister Thessaly appeared, leaning casually against the doorframe, a cruel smile tugging at her lips. "Should have kept your legs closed," she said, voice smooth like poison. "Serves you right." My whole body trembled. Not from the cold, but from rage. "He's your nephew," I hissed. "He's a child." Thessaly laughed. "And you think that makes up for the choices you made? Actions have consequences, little sister. Welcome to yours." Kalen whimpered, and I held him tighter, shielding him from their venom. "Get out," Marvette said simply, her voice devoid of emotion. "Take your mistake with you. You want to play mom? Do it somewhere else." I stared at her. "I have nowhere to go." "Not my problem." Thessaly's mocking laugh echoed behind the slamming door. The porch light clicked off. Darkness swallowed us. The rain didn't stop. Neither did Kalen's sobs. I sat on the porch for a second longer, my back against the cold wood, cradling him against my chest. The blanket between us was soaked, but it was all we had. I didn't cry, not then. I was too hollow. I stood slowly, knees buckling slightly, and stepped into the storm. I didn't know where I was going. Just away. Away from that house, from that woman who called herself a mother. From the sister who laughed as my child shivered on wet concrete. Streetlights glared through the downpour, their halos blurring into messy streaks. My vision stung, not from tears, but from the sharp edge of betrayal. I kept whispering over and over again to Kalen, "We'll be okay, baby. We'll be okay," though I didn't believe it yet. I had to make him believe it. The rain kept coming, turning sidewalks into rivers, my shoes into heavy sponges. I passed by closed storefronts and dark windows, every door a reminder that no one was coming for us. No one even knew. No one except me. And I wasn't enough, not yet. We made it 5 blocks before my body started to give out. My legs wobbled. Kaylin stirred against my chest. I turned the corner onto a quieter street, hoping to find a covered bus stop or something, anything. That's when I saw the headlights. They came fast, bright, blinding. I turned just in time to curl around Kaylin as the car skidded toward us. There was no time to scream. Only impact. Only darkness. The moment the car struck, it was like the air had been knocked out of existence. Pain exploded across my side as I hit the asphalt, but I never let go of Kaylin. My arms locked around him in an unbreakable grip, shielding him even as my own bones screamed. My head struck something hard, concrete, maybe. The world twisted, sound turned distant, like I'd fallen underwater. Then, blackness. I don't know how long I was out. But when I opened my eyes again, the storm was gone. Fluorescent lights buzzed above me, harsh and sterile. I blinked slowly, the ceiling swimming into focus. My mouth was dry. My body felt too heavy for breath. Something beeped rhythmically nearby. Then, all at once, panic returned. Kaylin. I tried to sit up and pain flared through my ribs, sharp and punishing. I choked out a gasp. Where's my baby? I croaked. A man's voice, steady, calm, answered from the corner of the room. He's right here. I turned my head. There, in a clear hospital bassinet next to my bed, lay Kaylin, wrapped in a clean blanket, his little chest rising and falling in sleep. His yellow knit blanket was draped over the edge of the crib, freshly washed, but still unmistakable. Relief tore through me so suddenly, I almost sobbed. He was safe. He was alive. I reached out, my fingers brushing against his tiny hand. He stirred slightly, lips pursing in a dream. My vision blurred. Tears came, quiet and uncontrollable. The kind I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. You're awake, the same voice said. I looked up. A man stood from the corner chair. Mid-30s, maybe older, tall, well-dressed in a way that looked expensive but lived in, shirt sleeves rolled, dark hair damp like he'd come in from the rain and never stopped moving. His shoes were still wet. I'm Donovan, he said simply. I'm the one who hit you. I blinked. The words landed heavy. But before I could react, he stepped forward and added, I couldn't leave you there. You and your son, you were lying in the middle of the street. I called 911. Rode in the ambulance with you. Stayed through check-in. Why? I whispered. You don't even know me. He paused, like the answer was too obvious. Because no one should be alone in the rain holding a baby. My throat closed up. I didn't know what to say. He didn't look like the kind of man who'd stop. He looked like the kind who passed by, important, focused, busy. But something in his face said he had once needed someone too. Someone who didn't show up. Before I could ask anything else, a doctor entered, a woman in her 50s with graying curls and a voice that sounded like it had seen everything. You've got a mild concussion, some bruised ribs, and a hairline fracture in your left wrist, she said. No internal bleeding. You're lucky. Her gaze softened as she turned to Kaylin. And your son? Not even a scratch. Just cold, hungry, and scared. He'll be fine. I nearly collapsed in gratitude. My body might have been battered, but Kaylin, he was okay. After the doctor left, I glanced toward Donovan. He stood again, awkward now, like unsure if he should go. I didn't mean to hit you, he said. I swear, I didn't see you until the last second. I was driving slow. The rain was insane. I believe you, I said, voice soft. He hesitated. Do you have someone I should call? Family? I laughed under my breath, a short, broken sound. They're the reason I was on that street. Donovan said nothing. Just nodded slowly. Like he understood more than I'd said. There's a place I have, he said after a beat. A guest house behind mine. It's empty. It's quiet. You and your son can stay there. Just until you figure out your next step. I stared at him. A stranger. Offering shelter. No conditions. No judgment. You don't even know me, I whispered again. He smiled, faint but sincere. Maybe not. But I know what it looks like when someone's lost everything and still holds on to what matters most. I looked down at Kalen, who gripped the edge of the blanket in his sleep. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have money. I didn't even have dry clothes. But I had him. And right now, someone, this stranger, was offering me a moment to breathe. So I nodded. Just once. That's all it took. The next morning, Donovan picked us up from the hospital just after sunrise. The world outside looked washed clean, like the storm had rinsed away all the ugliness for a moment. But the aches in my ribs, the bruise on my temple, and the bandage on my wrist were reminders that not everything could be scrubbed out by rain. Kalen slept soundly in the car seat Donovan had bought on the way, brand new, tags still attached. His little chest rose and fell in peaceful rhythm, his thumb curled into his fist. I sat next to him in Donovan's sleek black SUV, a blanket over my lap and a sense of disorientation I couldn't shake. I didn't speak much. I was afraid if I did, I'd cry. Again. Donovan didn't push. He just drove. The city faded behind us, traffic thinning out as we took a winding road lined with tall oak trees that still dripped from the storm. Eventually, he turned onto a gravel driveway I hadn't even noticed until we were halfway down it. Lantern posts lined the edges, and at the end sat a massive white estate with wraparound porches and gleaming windows. My mouth went dry. That couldn't be it. Surely, we'd turn off somewhere. Drive to a modest little cottage or guest wing. But no, Donovan slowed in front of the main house, then pulled toward a smaller, two-story structure tucked off to the right. The guest house. Except guest house didn't feel like the right word. It was bigger than any place I'd ever lived, painted a soft cream with pale blue shutters and climbing ivy curling around the porch rails. Flower boxes hung under every window. The place looked like it belonged in a Southern Living magazine, not in the orbit of someone like me. Donovan got out, circled around, and opened the door for me. He grabbed Kalen's diaper bag, another thing he'd picked up at a 24-hour store, and gestured toward the door. "Come on," he said gently. "You'll like it." My shoes squeaked on the stone path as I followed him, Kalen cradled in my arms. My heart thudded with each step. Was this real? Was this some kind of cruel trick? But when Donovan unlocked the door and swung it open, I nearly gasped. The inside smelled like warm vanilla and fresh linen. Sunlight poured through spotless windows, catching on the polished wood floors. There was a living room with overstuffed couches and throw pillows, a full kitchen with stainless steel appliances, and 2 bedrooms, each made up like a boutique hotel. One even had a tiny crib waiting by the window. I stood frozen just inside the threshold, overwhelmed. "This can't be for people like me," I whispered. Donovan raised an eyebrow. "People like you? You mean, mothers who deserve a safe place?" I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. He gave me a small nod and left quietly, giving me space. For a long moment, I just stood there. Then I moved, slowly, into the nursery room. I laid Kalen in the crib, half expecting him to wake and cry. But he didn't. He just sighed, rolled onto his side, and sank deeper into sleep. That's when I heard the knock at the front door. A woman stepped inside without waiting for permission. She was in her late 50s, with short silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. She wore jeans, boots, and a faded chambray shirt. There was a steeliness to her posture, but something kind in her face. "Harriet," she said. "I keep this place running when Donovan forgets the rest of us need more than coffee and air." She walked in like she owned the place, like she'd done this 100 times, and set a basket on the kitchen counter. Some groceries. Diapers. Wipes. Oh, and a pie. Because pie makes things less awful. I stared, blinking. She gave me a look that sliced through my walls like butter. "You're waiting for the catch," she said knowingly. "There isn't one." She paused, then added with a gentler tone. "Donovan doesn't do charity. He does decency." She stayed for half an hour, unpacking baby clothes someone must have bought overnight. All of them still had stickers and tags, tiny onesies, fresh baby soap, even a soft yellow towel with duck ears on the hood. Harriet didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer explanations. She just talked about the weather, about how Kaylin looked like a little prince, and how she once raised 3 boys on her own. Before she left, she touched my arm and said, "There's coffee in the cupboard and tea if you're more the quiet type. And if the silence gets too loud, just holler. I'm a holler away." I didn't cry until the door closed behind her. That night, I sat by the window in the guest house holding Kaylin's yellow knit blanket. It smelled like detergent now, but it still felt like a piece of the storm clinging to me. I watched my baby sleep in his crib, surrounded by warmth and safety for the first time in his life. Donovan stopped by with more supplies, groceries, a stuffed bear, and a portable heater even though the house was already warm. I asked why. He shrugged. "Because you shouldn't have to ask for comfort." Before he left, he looked at me, really looked, and said quietly, "You're safe now, Kane. You don't have to keep running." But the truth was, I hadn't stopped running. Not yet. Not really. I just didn't know it yet. For 2 weeks, I lived inside a dream I didn't trust. Every morning, sunlight spilled through the guest house windows like something out of a fairy tale. Kaylin giggled at the ceiling fan, babbled nonsense to his stuffed bear, and rolled on the yellow knit blanket like he had never known cold or hunger. I made breakfast in a kitchen that didn't reek of mildew. I brewed tea without worrying if I had to stretch groceries for the rest of the week. And every evening, Donovan would knock softly, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to check in. He never pushed. Never pried. He didn't act like a savior. Just solid. Present. Harriet became a fixture too, popping in with a basket of laundry I hadn't asked her to wash, or new pacifiers on sale, so why not? She never said it, but I think she knew I hadn't had a single real conversation with another woman that wasn't transactional or tense in years. And slowly, tentatively, I began to believe. Maybe Kaylin and I could belong somewhere. Maybe safety wasn't a trick. Until it wasn't. It was a Wednesday morning, my slowest shift at Southern Bites, the diner downtown where I'd managed to pick up part-time hours. Harriet had insisted on watching Kaylin. I remember the sky was clear for once, the sun warm on my shoulders as I wiped down the counter and hummed under my breath. And then I felt it. That tightening in my chest. A ripple down my spine, like static. Before I turned around, I heard her voice. "So, this is what you've been reduced to." I froze. I didn't need to look to know. But I did. I turned, and there she was. My mother. Marvette. Standing just inside the diner's doorway in her Sunday best, powder blue skirt suit, matching clutch, pearls around her neck like they were armor. Her face wore the same expression it always did when she entered a room, that she owned it. At her side, like an extension of her shadow, was Thessaly. High ponytail, heels clicking, lip gloss perfect. They looked like they'd stepped out of a church brochure. But I knew better. Hell wore heels, and she was wearing them now. The room went quiet. Forks paused midair. My coworker Marty looked over with confusion. I prayed he'd say something. Anything. He didn't. "Guess the rich man didn't marry you after all," Thessaly sneered. Still slinging hash and pretending to matter. My throat closed. I set the coffee pot down slowly, forcing control into my limbs. "You need to leave," I said. My voice came out low. Almost too steady. Marvette raised an eyebrow. "Leave? Oh no, darling. We're not here to make a scene. We're here to remind you, blood matters. And you owe this family for the stain you put on our name." "Stain?" I whispered. Her smile was ice. "You left with that bastard child like you were some kind of victim. You think hiding behind some man's money changes what you are?" My hands trembled. "You left my son in the rain," I said. It came out softer than I expected. "And I'd do it again," Marvette said, her eyes never flinching. "Better than letting you drag us all down with you." It hit like a slap I didn't see coming. Thessaly laughed. "What, you think we came to beg for forgiveness? We came to remind you that no matter where you sleep now, you came from dirt." They turned and walked out like they'd won something. I barely made it to the bathroom before my knees gave out. I slid down the stall wall, pressing my forehead against my knees as the tears came, not loud, not even shaking. Just steady. Silent. Like a leak that had finally cracked through the dam. Donovan's voice echoed in my head, "You deserve more than survival." But in that moment, survival felt like the only thing I had left. I don't remember finishing my shift. I don't remember clocking out. I just remember walking through the door of the guest house like a ghost. Harriet took one look at me and didn't say a word. She scooped Kalen out of his high chair and gave me a kiss on the cheek. "I'll give you some air." She was gone before I could thank her. That evening, Donovan showed up. I didn't answer the knock right away. "You're quiet," he said, standing in the doorway. "Rough shift?" I nodded. "Just a bad day." He didn't move. Didn't push. Just waited. And suddenly, it poured out. They came to the diner. My mom. Thessaly. They humiliated me in front of everyone. And she said she'd do it again. Leave Kalen in the rain. Like he's nothing. My voice cracked. Donovan's jaw tightened. They only have power if you keep letting them take pieces of you. I stared at the floor. I don't know how to stop them. He crouched in front of me. Met my eyes. If you want to fight, you have to do it smart. No reacting. No letting them pull you into their game. I didn't answer, but his words echoed long after he left. That night, I lay awake with Kalen curled against my chest, the yellow blanket around us like a shield. I stared at the ceiling and realized something horrible. I'd spent my whole life thinking silence would protect me. But all it had ever done was make me easier to hurt. The next day, I strapped Kalen into his stroller and walked to the Birmingham Public Library. The cold air bit at my cheeks, but it felt good. Sharp. Real. Inside, I logged onto a public computer and typed in words I never thought I'd search. Protective orders in Alabama. Custody rights for single mothers. How to stop family harassment. Each search was like striking a match in the dark. That night, after Kalen fell asleep, I picked up my phone and wrote a text with trembling fingers. "Don't come near me or my son again. This is your only warning." The reply came in seconds. "You think you can threaten me? You'll come crawling back. You always do." I stared at the screen. Then deleted the message. No tears. No reply. Just calm. And for the first time, I didn't feel helpless. I felt ready. They'd brought the storm. But I was learning how to build shelter. The courthouse didn't smell like justice. It smelled like old paper, polished wood, and something sour underneath, like the sweat of too many people trying to stay composed. I held Kalen tighter against my hip as Donovan guided us through the wide glass doors. My heels clicked on the marble floor, too loud for the way my heart was beating. Each step toward the courtroom felt like I was being dragged backward into a life I'd clawed to escape. But I wasn't alone. Harriet walked ahead of us, holding a thermos in one hand and a manila folder in the other. Donovan stayed close by my side, his presence steady, silent, like a wall that wouldn't budge no matter how hard the wind blew. And leading our little formation was Mr. Hargrove, Donovan's attorney and now mine. Tall, lean, with a silver beard and slow, deliberate movements, he looked like a man who'd seen more lies than most people here in a lifetime. He didn't waste time with pep talks. He'd given me facts and options. Now it was showtime. Inside the courtroom, Marvette and Thessaly were already seated, dressed like they were at a Sunday brunch. Marvette wore lavender, pearls, and a smile like she thought this was a pageant. Thessaly looked bored, filing her nails with one hand and scrolling her phone with the other. When Marvette saw me enter, her lips curled, not in warmth, but in challenge. Like a queen observing a rebel peasant. As I walked past, she leaned just close enough to whisper, "You'll never take my grandson from me." I didn't flinch. Donovan's hand rested briefly on my lower back, grounding me. Inside, I was screaming. But outside, I stayed still. We sat. Kalen had fallen asleep against my chest, unaware that his fate was about to be debated like he was a property line. The judge entered. Female. Middle-aged. Sharp eyes. The kind that sees through theatrics but demands precision. The hearing began. Marvette's attorney, a smug man named Grayson Fields, launched first. "Your Honor," he said with an almost oily politeness, "we are here because my client, Mrs. Marvette Price, seeks visitation rights to maintain a familial bond with her grandchild. Unfortunately, her daughter, Miss Kane Price, has made this unreasonably difficult due to personal grievances and instability." He gestured toward me like I was on a witness stand for a murder trial. "She lives in a residence owned by a man she is not married to, with no clear source of income, no legal guardianship support, and a history of emotional volatility." I blinked. Volatility? You left my child in the rain. Next, he called Thessaly to testify. She strutted up to the witness box like it was a catwalk. "I've seen her leave the baby unattended in the guest house yard," she said, hand to chest. "She works long hours and depends on strangers to raise him. I've seen her cry in public, yell at family, even threaten to keep Kalen from us forever." A few gasps rippled from the back of the courtroom. I clenched my hands beneath the table. My wrist ached from the fracture. My jaw from not screaming. Donovan leaned over and whispered, "Remember, no reactions. That's what they want." I nodded, barely. Now it was our turn. Mr. Hargrove stood, slow and precise. He walked to the center of the courtroom with the air of someone who had nothing to prove, and would still win. "Your Honor," he began, "we are not here to discuss hurt feelings or family drama. We are here because my client is attempting to protect her child from documented emotional abuse and negligence." He approached the bench and handed the judge a set of photos. My stomach turned. I knew what they were. Kalen. On the porch. In the rain. His yellow blanket drenched. His face red from screaming. My arms clutching him like the world was collapsing. I had taken them that night, shaking, soaked, terrified, but needing proof. The judge's face changed as she flipped through them. Her posture straightened. "Miss Price," she said to Marvette, "is this accurate?" Marvette hesitated. "Just a flicker. Then, it's taken out of context." But the crack had formed. Next, Hargrove called me to testify. I rose, legs trembling, and walked to the stand. I held Kalen the entire time. No babysitter. No help. He stayed with me, like always. I swore in and looked directly at the judge. "My mother didn't just leave him outside," I said. "She told me to my face she doesn't raise bastards. She slammed the door on her own grandchild. She didn't want time with him, she wanted control over me. My voice didn't shake. Not this time. She filed this to punish me for choosing my son over her expectations. The judge didn't blink. After I stepped down, Mr. Hargrove returned for closing remarks. This case is not about a grandmother's right to holiday visits. It's about power. And my client has chosen peace for herself and her son, not out of bitterness, but for safety. The courtroom was silent. Then came the decision. The judge leaned forward. I find in favor of Miss Price, she said. There is no merit to the visitation claim. Furthermore, I am issuing a restraining order against Mrs. Marvette Price effective immediately. Any further contact without legal mediation will be considered a violation. Marvette gasped. Thessaly's jaw dropped. But I didn't look at them. I looked at Kaylin. Still asleep. Still mine. Still safe. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Marvette charged toward me. Her heels clicked like gunshots. You think you've won? She hissed. You're still nothing. You'll always be nothing. I stepped forward, closing the space between us. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cuss. I didn't flinch. I simply asked, then why are you so afraid of me now? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Thessaly pulled her back. Donovan guided me toward the exit without a word. That night, I sat by Kaylin's crib with a cup of peppermint tea Harriet had left on the counter. Donovan sat across from me, elbows on his knees. You didn't just survive today, he said quietly. You made her afraid. I let the words settle. And for once, they didn't feel like praise. They felt like armor. I'm done being afraid, I said. And I'm done being small. He nodded once. Then they've already lost. I watched Kaylin sleep. Tiny hands curled into fists. Soft breath rising and falling. The war wasn't over. But the tide had turned. And I was no longer the hunted. I was the storm. The silence after war is the strangest sound. It isn't peace, not exactly. It's absence, the hush left behind when the screaming stops. And at first, I didn't know what to do with it. After the court ruling, the days blurred. Kaylin and I returned to the guest house. Harriet had left fresh flowers in the kitchen and a note taped to the fridge. You earned this stillness. Don't rush past it. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't wake up with dread chewing holes in my chest. There was no emergency. No surprise attack. Just the soft cooing of my baby boy, rolling across the floor in a yellow onesie with his little dandelion fists waving in the air. Donovan checked in less frequently now, not out of distance, but out of respect. He gave me space. The kind that didn't feel like abandonment, but like trust. Sometimes, he'd drop by with muffins from a nearby bakery, or a new board book for Kaylin. He never stayed long unless I invited him. I usually didn't. Not because I didn't want him to, but because I was still learning how to breathe alone. One evening, while Kaylin napped, I sat on the front porch with a pen and notebook in my lap. For weeks, I'd been carrying them around, flipping pages but never writing. That night, I did. I didn't start with anger. Or trauma. Or even Marvette. I started with Kaylin. You came into the world with more love than fear in your eyes, I wrote. And that's what I want you to keep. Love, more than fear. It wasn't poetry. It wasn't profound. But it was real. It was mine. A few days later, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, but answered. She reached across the counter and squeezed my hand. You made it out. Be proud. On the drive home, Kaylin babbled to himself in the back seat. The trees were budding along the road, tiny green signs of a spring that was finally coming. Later that night, I took the yellow knit blanket, the same one Kaylin had been left with in the rain, and laid it across my lap. I traced the edges with my fingers, the yarn fraying just slightly where time had tugged at it. Once, this blanket had been a symbol of everything broken. Now, it was proof. Proof that we'd survived. That we still held warmth. That I'd held on. Donovan arrived not long after, stepping onto the porch as the sun dipped behind the tree line. He didn't knock. He just stood by the railing, his usual cup of black coffee in hand. "You okay out here?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, settling the blanket over my knees. "Just thinking." He nodded, quiet for a while. Kaylin's laughter echoed from inside, Harriet chasing him around the kitchen island with a rubber spatula, both of them giggling like there had never been a storm. "You've come a long way," Donovan said. I didn't answer immediately. Then, I whispered, "They left me in the rain." He turned toward me. "But I built my own shelter," I added. "And in it, we're finally safe." The air was still. But I didn't feel the need to fill it. I had nothing left to prove. Not to them. Not even to myself. I was no longer surviving. I was living. Spring crept in quietly. No grand announcement, no sudden burst of warmth, just the slow unfolding of blossoms outside the guest house window, and Kaylin's bare feet pattering across hardwood floors each morning, chasing the light. It had been nearly a month since the court hearing. The restraining order had been approved, and Marvette's visitation petition evaporated like smoke, no appeal, no letters, no more courthouse whispers. Just silence. Thessaly, on the other hand, made her bitterness known in louder ways. She flooded social media with venom, ungrateful brat living off handouts, acting like a martyr. I didn't respond. I didn't even read them after the first one. Let her scream into the void. She didn't live here. She didn't get to disturb what I'd fought so hard to rebuild. Each day settled deeper into routine. Mornings with Kaylin in the garden, afternoons with Harriet folding laundry and teaching me how to make real Southern biscuits from scratch. Sometimes Donovan would come by in the evenings, just to talk, just to exist near us. He always knocked. Always waited to be invited. I found comfort in that. In the way he never assumed a place in my life. One morning, as golden light spilled through the sheer curtains, Kaylin toddled through the garden clutching a dandelion like it was treasure. He laughed with his whole body, stumbling toward Harriet, who caught him mid-wobble and twirled him in the air. I stood on the porch, cup of tea in hand, watching. Peace didn't feel foreign anymore. It felt earned. Later that afternoon, I returned to Southern Bites one last time, not to work, not even to eat, just for closure. I needed to close a chapter properly, with my own two hands. Mrs. Lorraine saw me the moment I stepped through the door. Her eyes lit up. "You okay, baby?" she asked, voice as warm as fresh coffee. I nodded. "I'm getting there." I thanked her. For every extra shift, every time she didn't ask questions, every time she looked the other way when I needed space more than supervision. "You walked through fire," she said, squeezing my hand. "Be proud you made it out." On the way home, I rolled the window down. Let the breeze rush over my skin. I used to think freedom would feel like running. Turns out, it feels like stillness. That night, after Kaylin had gone down, I opened my journal again. Not to process pain this time, but to acknowledge healing. I thought I needed her apology to heal, I wrote. But I don't. My healing is mine now. I will never let Kaylin believe love means enduring cruelty. I will never let him think family means fear. There was a knock at the door. Donovan stood there, holding a small cardboard box and a grin that made my heart skip for reasons I still wasn't ready to name. "I was cleaning out the garage," he said, "and found these. Thought Kaylin might like a few of my old toys. Not all of them are choking hazards." I laughed, like, really laughed. He stepped inside, set the box down, and glanced at the yellow blanket folded neatly on the couch. His expression softened. "That thing has seen more rain than most umbrellas," he said. "It's proof," I replied. "Of what?" "That we made it." There was a pause. "You did," he said quietly. "You didn't just survive, Kane. You rebuilt." I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw the future, not as something to fear, but something I could shape. Something I could invite in. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "You know," he said, hand on the knob, "you never needed anyone's permission to be whole." Then he was gone. I sat by the window for a while, listening to the wind, watching the trees sway gently. Kalen stirred once in his crib, murmuring something soft and sweet in his sleep. I tucked the yellow blanket around him and kissed his forehead. Then I whispered, "We're not in the rain anymore, baby." And for the first time, it didn't hurt to say it. It felt like truth. It felt like home. There's a quiet kind of strength in choosing to protect what matters, even when the world turns its back on you. Kane's journey wasn't one of perfection or ease. It was marked by abandonment, cruelty, and the kind of heartbreak that breaks most people in half. But through it all, she held on to one truth, that her son's safety, dignity, and future were worth fighting for. In the face of betrayal by the very people meant to love her, she chose courage over silence, truth over fear. And in doing so, she built a life of her own, one shaped not by the expectations of others, but by her own fierce loyalty and resilience. The love between a mother and her child became her anchor, and the kindness of unexpected allies gave her the strength to rise. This story reminds us that healing isn't owed, it's claimed. And that even in the darkest storms, when you choose to stand your ground and speak your truth, you don't just survive, you begin to live. Because sometimes, the family you fight for isn't the one you came from, it's the one you build with your bare hands, in the rain, and against all odds.